Hey Kids Cook Real Food, Katie Kimball here for the Healthy Parenting Connector. And as always, we are here to connect you parents who so desperately want to raise healthy kids with the experts who have the information you need. Today we're talking about letting go and letting grow. What is our goal for our parenting? What's our goal for our kids? We want to launch them into the world someday as healthy, independent adults. And I'm so honored to interview Lenore Skenazy today. She has been all over the news, on the Daily Show, on all these crazy big shows because she wrote once about letting her 9-year-old ride the subway. And for that, she gained the title of America's Worst Mom. I'm proud to interview America's Worst Mom. Thanks for being here today, Lenore.
Oh, I'm proud to be here. Thanks a lot, Katie.
So I want to tell you just a little bit about what Lenore has been doing since that fateful day that she wrote Why I Let My 9-Year-Old Ride the Subway Alone. She started a movement called Free Range Kids, and she's been declaring that, you know what, our kids are smarter and stronger than our culture gives them credit for. She wrote a book called Free Range Kids, and now she has founded Let Grow, which is a nonprofit helping schools, parents, and communities let their kids go and let them grow. She supports legislative efforts. She busts myths, all promoting the idea that when adults step back, kids step up. So good. Plus, for the record, she used to write for Mad Magazine, which is a point of personal pride.
Now I can leave. you got that in.
I love that. You've been a journalist and writing for many, many years. So I'm curious, when you wrote that fateful column, what sort of topics were you supposed to be writing about and invited all those haters to go nuts about your 9-year-old riding the subway alone?
When I wrote that column, afterwards, I ended up looking back on earlier columns I'd written, and I had written things like, I let my 6-year-old go to the men's room when we're at a play, and I let my 8-year-old go downstairs and play in the courtyard without me. So I realized that over the years, in between writing about everything from literally Barbie to bioterrorism as a columnist, you just sort of get to write what you want. I had been striking a blow for childhood independence and wondering where our trust in our kids had gone, to the point where anything that I did sort of without a second thought, and my mom let me do without anybody saying, why did she let her child play outside? That had evaporated in the course of a generation. And as a journalist, I was just very curious as to how and why.
That's great. Okay, so a columnist. So you were allowed to write about anything, which is good. Now, what year was this? What?
Oh my God! Let me just say that the 9-year-old is 22.
Okay,
so it's been a while. Same story.
Right. I mean, are you seeing improvements over those 13 years?
You really can do your math in your head. Like, that's really good. Okay, find a friendly number. 22 is close to 20. I've seen two things going on, and I don't know which is winning. I've seen people scorning the idea of helicopter parenting. And I always actually feel a little ambivalent about that, because I never blame parents. I feel like parents are stuck in this crazy culture where you can open any magazine, turn to any website or television station, and hear a story about a mom who wasn't paying enough attention, and woe is her, and blame and shame are heaped upon her. And so I feel like parents feel like they almost are obliged to helicopter, even if they don't want to, because you send your kid out to the park, there's no one for them to play with. And meanwhile, somebody's picking out a phone and calling 911 to say, I see a child outside and I would like her to be, thrown in jail. And so on the one hand, I see that this culture hasn't changed in terms of blaming, shaming, worrying, worst case scenario, catastrophizing. On the other hand, I do see, so many people have said that, what we call free range parenting, which is simply, there's no card that you earn, or, badge that you earn for doing it exactly right. Nobody does it exactly right. I invented it. I don't know how to do it. It's just a sort of trust in your kid that, that they can do at least what you could do. at their age. I mean, you're teaching kitchen skills. There are so many parents who are afraid to let their children use the stove, use a knife. And then there are this other army of parents who are like, look what my kid can do, and posting a picture on Facebook. Look, here's my kid making omelets for all of us, and she's 5. So it's both things going on at once. And the only other thing I would say is that with the ability to track our kids through technology, I also feel that's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, it allows parents to feel a little more free sending their kids out. But on the other hand, is that really free if you're being tracked by your parents, and they can, come and collect you at any time, call you at any time, or even help you at any time, as opposed to just letting you muddle through. So that's a long, right, a long answer for, I don't know. What do you think?
A memory just popped into my head of when my oldest, who's now 15, was 4, so 11 years.
Boy, oh my God, you should just be teaching algebra, right? Forget cooking.
Stick with English and writing. But so he was in preschool, and he drew a picture as part of, their writing. They draw pictures and then try to write some words. And he drew himself standing at the stove making an egg. He forgot to draw me because, I wouldn't.
Forgot in quotes.
There.
Right.
But I remember seeing that picture and having these dual thoughts. I'm so proud. I love that he enjoyed that moment, being in the kitchen, cooking the egg. And what is his teacher going to think? And
what did she think?
To blame, shame, and worry. Well, you know what? It was a Montessori school, so it's all good.
It's all good. Why didn't he make the flame out of sticks?
Right. But the fact that I had to feel that, I think really is a confirmation of what you're saying, that no matter what the parents individually, the decisions we're making, there is sort of a toxic culture that could be holding us back. We talk a lot with food about what's the root cause, what's the root cause of our behavior, of our food sensitivities. What do you diagnose the root cause of this culture? Where'd this come from?
Well, I'm going to whip us through the reasons, because we only have half an hour together. One is really obvious. You got to blame the media. The media discovered missing children in the 80s. They put them on the milk cartons. They made miniseries about them. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children testified in Congress falsely that 50,000 children are snatched every year. That's off by a factor of about 50,000. It's way, way smaller. There's no crime that is less common than a stranger abducting a child. Thank God. And yet, when you start looking at all those milk cartons and you're eating your cereal in the morning, or your kid is eating a homemade omelet, you start to feel that right and left children are being snatched off the street. So the media decided that this was recognized this as the most lucrative story that they could tell, because if they're telling the story about a white middle or upper middle class child who's been taken by a stranger, no one will turn off their TV, which is why Law and Order started Law and Order SVU, because, why would you start a whole television show about the saddest, grossest, most disturbing possible thing? Well, it must make money, right? And so it does. So between the news and the drama shows, you just are getting a steady diet, as it were, of these really very troubling stories that lodge themselves in our brain, and our brain works like Google. And if you ask, is my child safe at the bus stop, the brain says, let me look. And the easiest stories for it to find are, no, Eitan Patz was taken from a bus stop. No, JC Dugard was taken from a bus stop. And just like with Google, you think that the first couple of responses are probably all you need, right? The easiest to retrieve responses or research results are the ones that you consult. And in this case, the easiest ones to retrieve are actually the ones that are the scariest and probably least common. And that starts determining what we think of when we see a kid outside, or you see a kid at a stove. So there's the media. You live in a litigious culture. You start thinking like a lawyer. Could I be sued for this? Is this fair? What about a waiver? Should I get rid of the trampoline? All these things rattle through your brain. We live in an expert culture, which is why I never say I'm an expert. I'm just certainly not a parenting expert. I'd say I'm an expert on fear at this point. But experts always tell you you're doing it wrong. Otherwise, you don't need them,
Oh,
right?
right.
So, I mean, we keep thinking like, should we start our own expert, channel, with all our expertise? And it's like, all you parents out there are experts.
Mm,
And it's just the experts who have convinced you that you need somebody else to help you. In many cases, you don't. In many cases, you can ask your sister-in-law. You can remember your own childhood. It doesn't require an expert to decide what you're going to say to your kid when they bring home a picture like your kid drew, right?
mhm.
It's just, oh, that's nice. That's totally fine. You don't have to think, I don't want to squash his creativity, but I also don't want him to get too inflated an idea of himself, and I got to think of that growth mindset, and besides of which, is too much praise actually the opposite, and then they start working for the praise instead of just drawing. It's not that complicated. It's like, that's a great drawing. Oh, you're cooking an egg, why don't you go cook one now? And then finally, you have the marketplace, which of course is trying to sell you stuff. And the easiest things to sell parents are something to save your kid after you've
Yeah.
made your parent worried that the kid is not going to do well or not going to survive. Then you can sell them anything, and we do.
Sure, fear sells. I mean, that's the way our brain's created, is our amygdala is firing to keep us safe and
Hmm.
keep our kids safe. And that's what we're going to throw our money at. It's, a safety knife or a knife for children is not very expensive. It's
How, tell
not
me
gonna,
about a safety knife. Tell me what that is.
oh, yeah. And I revised that because I don't love safety knives. No, there are kid safe knives, and they're plastic and they're serrated. So you can kind of
Wow.
sort of cut real things, but not your fingers. Um,
Serrated plastic knives doesn't sound like it would go through, like it certainly won't go through a carrot, right?
No, no. I mean, not easily. And that's why I don't like them, because they teach a different technique than you would use with a real knife. And I'd rather the kids learn their muscle memory with real knives. Just use a butter knife if you're cutting soft foods. So, they're,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not selling very, they're not a huge dollar value product like your
Mm-hmm.
video baby monitors and your car
Yeah.
seats, all
Yeah.
the safety,
All
safety.
the high price items, right? Let me tell you a knife story really quick, if I may.
Yes.
Um, so I was talking to some parents in Chicago a couple of years ago, and one mom told me that her daughter's kindergarten teacher had recommended her for the talented and gifted program at the school. And the mom was pleased, of course, and she said, "Well, why? Like tell me great things about my kid." And the kindergarten teacher says, "Well, she has extraordinary scissors skills." And the mom burst out laughing. She said, "That's it?" And she said, "Well, yes, she's just very, very adept." And mom said, "Well, I'm not that surprised. I adopted her from an orphanage in Haiti at age 3, where she had been cutting mangoes with a machete." And
No.
also helping her 1-year-old brother, whom the mom also adopted. And so, I think that, look, using those little fiskers, is probably not too big a leap for her. So we just forget how much kids are capable of, because we have been fed this lie that our kids are in constant danger, that they only learn when we're didactically teaching them and sitting down and showing them,
Mm.
and that they can't handle anything. And it's not true. It's dispiriting how little our society gives credit to kids for being able to do.
Mm. you know are crime statistics really down? Because I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of people hear you say that and they're like, yeah, but maybe she's only looking at, some part of the numbers, or like maybe she's leaving out non-urban or urban areas. Like, really, Lenore, are they really
Oh,
down?
yeah. I am leaving out some areas in that it's an aggregate number.
Uh-huh.
When I talk about the crime statistics being back to basically what, actually, I can't say from this past year because it's been such a strange year, but until
Sure.
now, we were back to the rate of about 1967. But I certainly recognize that it is hard to feel safer in a society that really has just amped up the the number of fear messages we get. I mean, even on Facebook, I'd say for somehow I've become sort of the national repository of all the people who write, "Oh, I never thought it would happen to me, but last night it did.
Oh,
I
no.
was at," and then, fill in the blank, Target, Walmart, IKEA, my local grocery store, and I saw 2 men looking at my children as we were shopping in the vegetable aisle. Then we went 3 aisles over in the cracker aisle, and there they were again. And I have no doubt that they were there to kidnap and sex traffic my children, but I stared them down and now we're safe. Or I saw their car outside with the door open and I didn't go out until they left. And what's interesting to me is how very, very similar each of these accounts sounds. And then often they get a lot of praise. They'll say, "You go, mama," or "You're mama bear," or "Thank God you're safe." But when I called up the Crimes Against Children Research Center, which writes the reports for the Department of Justice, the FBI, on what is happening with crimes against children, and I asked the head researcher, David Finkelhor, how many children have been kidnapped from their parents in public and sex trafficked, and he said zero. So it's upsetting to me that there is so much social capital that you get from either imagining or lying about a a near miss in the child trafficking department.
Well, and that's our brains just maybe we're going too far into that fear. So we're probably projecting a lot of danger where it is not, of course. What do you teach kids? I want to say you have like 3 R's that you teach kids if
Oh,
they
I
get
love,
nervous.
right. And these are not my 3 R's. Frankly, nothing I say is mine. I just collect stuff. I'm really a reporter at heart. But here's the deal. We've been teaching kids stranger danger, which implies two things. One is that strangers are dangerous.
Right.
And two, that kids have any clue what a stranger is. You know, if somebody comes up to you and says, "I know your mom," or, you know, "I'm another parent at your school," your kid is not going to know. And plus, you talk to strangers all day long. You go to the grocery and you say hi to the lady, you know, who's checking you out. So, so stranger danger is incorrect. So a better thing, it's not going to keep your kids safe, and it's pointing you in the wrong direction for where you have to worry. The vast majority of crimes against children are committed by people they know. And so it's better to sort of arm your kids with the 3 R's, which are these: recognize, resist, and report. And I'll go through them. Recognize that no one can touch you, wear your bathing suit covers, okay? Resist. Kick, scream, yell, run. You're allowed to be, you know, completely impolite, a brat. Just get yourself away. Nobody, you know, it's easier to get away because the person who is going to hurt you would prefer not to have to run after you. Okay, and then report. And report is just an R word for tell me. You know, anything that happened to you, somebody told you it was a secret, you know, he's going to hurt me, he's going to hurt you, he's going to hurt somebody, you know, tell me, I won't be mad at you, and I'll take care of things. And by removing the shame and the blame and saying, I'm not going to be mad at you, you have taken away the abuser's best friend, which is secrecy and silence. You know, and so by sort of opening up those lines of communication, as well as the, you know, recognize and resist, you are making your child so much safer than teaching them don't go off with strangers. But in terms of don't go off with strangers, I do have one easy to remember edict, which is simply you can talk to anyone, you cannot go off with anyone. So that also means that if your kid is outside and they, you know, they're lost or something and they want to ask somebody a question, they can. It's not like all strangers are going to be, you know, the strangers are going to, you know, kidnap and eat them just by asking them questions. So you can talk to them, but you just can't go off with them. And that's really equipping your child, as opposed to just either keeping them inside because they're strangers outside, or ill-equipping them with the wrong advice, which is beware of strangers.
And that's so simple. Any small child can understand that. Walking is fine, leaving is not. That's not complicated at all. That's great. You know, I think a lot of our listeners fully support this idea of giving their kids more independence. It can be difficult, though, to support what we're doing to those naysayers, the blame, shame, and worry folks. So what are the benefits, Lenore? Let's like totally inspire to, you know, why should we let our kids solve their own problems in this culture that is promoting helicopter parenting?
Yeah, I'll talk about that. And then also we'll talk about like ways to deflect that blaming, shaming culture, because I agree it's out there, and that's almost more scary than, you know, any of the stranger danger that we've been taught. But here's, you know, in terms of the benefits of solving their own problems, doing a little exploring, let me ask you, Katie, what you did as a kid that you loved doing that you don't see kids doing now. What'd you do?
I mean, I did crash around our neighborhood all the time. I collected salamanders, although my kids do these things. We have a garter snake that they caught outside in our house now. So
oh my God.
I know. I keep
what do you feed it?
I don't know. They feed it. They do all the
Oh, that's
research.
excellent. Okay. That's very cool.
We have 5 toads and 2 snakes in my little boy's bedroom. Yeah.
Wow. Well, if the garter snake eats what I think, you might have 4 toads.
Oh, yes. Well, yes, he can eat the toads, but they don't in the mix. So it's totally their project. So, my kids do a lot of the things I did as a kid, but I lived in a nice small town. And so starting in 3rd grade, walked from elementary school a full mile down to the Little League fields to play
Wow.
softball.
Wow. Wow, that's so cool. Boy, I'm helping out a mom now. Helping out, all I'm doing is publicizing her case. Who has in South Carolina, she has kids 9, 10, 11, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, and the school will not allow them to walk home. I mean, that's what we're talking about, is a society that is just undermining parents who want to give their kids some independence, and the kids who are ready for it and would be finding whatever is in South Carolina. I don't know if they have salamanders or toads or not, but the world is theirs, and we keep locking them in as if they're inanimate objects and don't need fresh air and don't need adventure and don't need to learn how to cross the street. So what do you get if you can let your child have some independence? You get a more independent child. And one of the things that we've been noticing over the last generation is a steady uptick in the number of kids with anxiety and depression. Yeah. And I would feel anxious if I'd been told that everything is too dangerous for me. Don't go out there. Let mom do it. You're going to cut off your finger. Really, how many fingers have gotten cut off? I would really be curious to hear. I mean, I would like to see a museum of all the children's fingers that cut off, but for kids cutting their own cucumbers, it would be an empty museum. Or there'd be one sad finger in the corner and everyone would be taking pictures with it,
because that child wasn't trained in proper technique.
That's right. And you know what? That child is going to do okay with 9 fingers. Not that I want to be on the record for saying 9 fingers is fine. Give them a knife, because I really don't think that's what's going to happen. But if you want, there's something called the internal locus of control. And I hate sounding like an expert, but that's the feeling of like that you have some control over your life, that you're not micromanaged. You have some agency. And when you're depressed and anxious, that internal locus of control is small. And when somebody is doing everything with you or for you all the time, the message you're getting is that you can't handle that. And so that is a depressing thought. So if you want your kids, and not that there's an exact formula, like if you give them 30% more independence, they will be 30% less anxious. It doesn't work that way. But most parents, when they think back on their childhoods and what they loved doing, I asked, was your mom with you? And everybody, burst into laughter. No, of course not. I was climbing a tree. I was down at the creek. I walked to the mall. And so, giving that to your kids is something that will accrue to their benefit, but also yours. Guess what? Some free time. Hey, you don't have to be high-fiving everything. You don't have to be there. You don't have to be biting your nails because they seem to be doing things poorly or arguing with a friend. If you're not there, they'll figure it out. Our slogan is Let Grow is the organization. And our slogan is, when adults step back, kids step up. And that's what we're talking about. But how do you do that in this society where everybody's saying, I can't believe she let him do it? And that's why we promote a couple of programs that that are free, that we suggest that schools do or that individuals can do. And
which is awesome. I mean, the kids are getting homework at school to go home and do one thing with the parent's permission by yourself you've never done before. That's amazing. It's simple. It's perfect.
It's called the Let Grow Project. It's on our website. And like I said, I steal all my ideas. This was not my idea. This was a 6th grade teacher in Manhattan thought, my kids are coming in and they're kind of undercooked in a way. They're very smart. It was a magnet school, public magnet school, but they hadn't done many things on their own. So she said, just go home and do one thing on your own. And then she would have me come in every year and listen to the kids as they told their stories or they read from their little essays. And it was just amazing. I mean, a one-shot deal of this one kid made an independence cake, which is perfect for you guys. She walked to the store on her own, first time, 6th grade. So she was 11. Yeah. And she said, on the way to the store, everyone looked angry. She said there were a lot of angry people around. They looked like they were going to reach out and snatch me. And she said getting there was not a laughing matter. And then she went shopping for all the ingredients. And then she paid with her own money because it was an Independence cake, and she paid with her
Wow.
allowance. And then my favorite part is, and I was just rereading it again. I hadn't read it in years. She said that the way home was shorter and more pleasant because I was already used to the walk.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, talk about talk about a change in perception. I mean, it's that fast. That's why. So I used to say, do the Let Grow project once. And I do still think that, one time breaks this ice of fear. The parents have let go. The kid has come back. It's the hero's journey. They walk through the door. They have the ingredients. It's a phenomenal experience. But then, because I try not to be a control freak, we were saying, well, teachers, you can do this however you like, or parents. Now we have the Let Grow Independence Kit, which is sort of a home version of the same project, which is to go do something on your own. And one teacher had her 7th grade students doing this 20 times a year. And that did a couple things. One is it allowed them to do some projects that I absolutely disapproved of because they struck me as so simple. Like I tried a new food or I set the table. And I was like, if that was your one independence project for the year, one Let Grow project, that would be not enough. But if you tried a new food and you walked to get a slice of pizza and you climbed a tree and you set the table and you did the laundry, the end of the year, 20 of them, I mean, these kids were so different.
Mm-hmm.
We made a video of them because it did seem to be, it's not a cure-all, it's not antibiotics, but it is an amazingly effective way of changing kids' perception of who they are and what they can do, and changing the parents' perception of the kids. And it's only to the good.
Oh, for sure. I mean, at 20, now you're building a critical mass. Now you're creating
Yeah.
an identity for these kids. Not I've done something once, but I can do things. I can do hard things. I can do new things. I mean, that's a beautiful family culture to
Hmm.
build too. Like you say, we don't know if it's 30% more and you get 30%
Yeah.
more independence. No, it's creating a culture of you were made to do hard things. You can do hard things. I believe in you and I'm going to let you do it
Hmm.
and just make
And
it happen.
right. And also, some of the things that we've defined as hard things in this generation are simple things.
True.
And you need to do them to recognize, like, it's not that hard to cross a street if you wait for the crossing light. It's not that hard to cook. That's your whole point, right? Once
Yeah.
you learn how to do it, it's something that's very natural and fun as opposed to Herculean.
Yes. So you use some terms that I think are so great. The writer in you just comes forth. And I want to talk about future proofing
Oh,
and
yeah.
beneficial risk. So unpack future proofing, how that applies to parenting. And then we want to talk about
Mhm.
knives and beneficial risk if we can.
Okay, and then we'll talk about whether it's risk.
Ah,
So, future proofing is a phrase from the world of engineering. And when you're about to build something that's very expensive, say a factory, you want to make sure that, like, when the future comes and suddenly we're using robots instead of people, or what used to take an entire room now takes something the size of, a water bottle, that you haven't just wasted all your money. And so you try to make it thinking ahead. How flexible can it be? How many different things can it handle? And that's what you want your kid to be too. You want them, like, just teaching. There's a really great book called Range. Remember, every book you buy should have the word range in it, whether it's range or free range kids. Anyways, he talks about, like, you can raise, with a little bit of luck, a chess prodigy if all you teach them is chess. But then they get to, the real world, and how do they get a job? How do they make small talk? How do they, how do they go to a dance and enjoy themselves? If you've just trained them in one thing, they are not future proof. Similarly, I feel like school is great at teaching academic things, but what about the ability to come up with something fun to do? What about the ability to make a friend? What about the ability to solve an argument? These are things that you learn through play and through muddling through. And so we just have to get outside the mindset that only academics matter and only who you are as a student matters. And so the Let Grow project in schools, first of all, shows kids that, like, even if you're failing at spelling, you're the kid who learned how to ride a bike, and good for you, or you came in with the muffins that you made. That is very cool. So there's more to you. You are better able to face the future because you are so multifaceted. And the other the other thing that we feel is very crucial for future proofing kids is giving them some time to play without an adult organizing the activity. How does that future proof a kid? Well, the kid has learned how to come up with something to do, get buy-in. It's boring. We're playing it this way. So let's see who wants to play it another way. Let's all vote on that. That's coming up with an alternative. That's figuring out how to make a decision fairly that everybody agrees with. That's democracy. And these are things that they're going to need as students and as adults. You're at work, you come up with an idea. How do you make sure that people like it? How do you listen to the other people and like me and shut up already and let the other person talk? So future proofing has to do with getting kids firing on more than just the school piston.
Nice. I say to my kids a lot, they'll come to me for help and I'll say, I have some ideas that could solve your problem, but I'm going to let you do it on your own first.
Wow.
Like you need to solve your own problems. And sometimes that's just me going, oh, I don't want to deal with this right now. But that's not bad parenting. That's letting the kids learn in the moment. I became really curious about this a few years ago when I was digging into those depression statistics you mentioned. And I started interviewing any teacher I could find. And one kindergarten teacher said she actually started having one recess in the front of the school where there's nothing, no toys. And the first couple of days, the kindergartners would wander around like they had no clue what to do. She said, figure it out. Oh, what a great story. And they eventually found some sticks and they eventually made a game, but they had no clue at the beginning. And another kindergarten teacher told a story of a child sitting in the mudroom going, I can't find my shoes, and just distraught, completely entitled, could not even stand up, turn around and find the child's shoes behind her. She said, well, of course that creates anxiety, right? Just what you said. If you don't feel like you can do anything for yourself,
right,
you're anxious.
Yeah, it seems so obvious. I have to tell you one story when you mentioned shoes. So at one of the schools that had done the Let Grow project, I visited afterwards and I asked the principal what's new or something like that. And she said, well, now there are fewer kids sticking out their feet. And I was like, what? Yeah, it's exactly. I was like, what do you mean? Tripping kids? I just didn't understand what she said. No, she said, like asking for the teacher to tie their shoe.
I see. So that was one of their big takeaways. That's fascinating.
I just thought that was astounding. And actually, I've told that story so much that if you watch this show, oh God, Duncanville. Have you heard of this show, Duncanville? Okay, it's Amy Poehler's animated show. They did a Free Range Kids episode, and they have the whole thing with the kids sticking out the shoe. It's like, okay, this story's getting around. That's cool.
That's great. I mean, it's a good analogy, right? Fewer kids sticking out their feet. That can be one of our goals as parents.
Right.
Fewer kids begging us for help, right? And I mean, knives are something that definitely freak parents out. When I do presentations, people say, oh, I'm so nervous. Will this be safe? And how do you think we can embrace that idea of working with knives as a beneficial risk? Although I have a feeling you're about to disagree with me, even on risk.
Well, let's say a beneficial skill, and I just, having heard the story about the 3-year-old who peeled her mangoes with a machete, I think that kids can handle knives. But I'm going to read to you remember there was that 7th grade teacher who had all her kids do these Let Grow projects, 20 of them.
Yeah.
At some point in the year, she asked them, what was a Let Grow project that you wanted to do, but you were hesitant to try? And 2 of them are totally relevant to you. One was, I was afraid to try and cook. I'm reading these because there's an open flame and I could get hurt. Okay. And then 2 was, I was hesitant to use a sharp knife as my parents had never let me before. So these are kids who are reaching puberty, whose parents don't trust them any more than you would trust a very small child. And that to me is, there's the opposite of beneficial risk to that. There's the quashing of the human spirit. And there's not only you're not allowed to do it, it's knowing that your parents don't believe in you. They think that you're so clumsy or so dense or so inept that somehow you can't use a basic tool of the civilization that's in every restaurant when you sit down. There they are. And so to be treated like a baby when you're not is very demoralizing. And so the benefit of using a knife is being part of the world and not being, refrained from it, restrained from it by parents who don't believe in you.
So stop taking the knives away at the steakhouse. Let them be there, right?
Doesn't a steakhouse sound great? Oh my God.
Oh, because we're recording this in 2020.
Yes, we are. Yeah. And it's
Well,
not the vegan, right? Not the vegan
yeah.
kitchen. Right?
Do you have any stories you'd want to share about? I mean, I feel like we hear all the scary stories that aren't even real about the child snatchers, but I think the stories you collect are very scary, to be honest, of the parents who are trying to raise free range kids and they run into trouble.
Yeah, that's been a conundrum for me because, on the one hand, we want parents to let go and let grow. And on the other hand, once in a while, a parent who does let their kid, walk to school or play outside or wait briefly in a car gets slammed and investigated. And so, what we're trying to do is, first of all, change society to the point where this doesn't seem crazy anymore,
Yeah.
that parents love their children and let them do things they think make sense. And generally, parents have a very better feel for it than some stranger walking by. But we're also trying to change the law and narrow the definition of neglect. Right now, neglect in most states is sort of a mushy thing in the law.
Ooh.
It says parents can't leave children in dangerous situations. Well, I don't think it's dangerous for my kids to be playing at the park. And I don't even think it's dangerous for my kid to wait in the car in front of the dry cleaner while I go in and get my dry cleaning. And so we want the laws to reflect that. And Utah did pass what they called the free range parenting law in 2018. And now we're working in another 5 or 6 states, including South Carolina, Colorado, oh my gosh, Texas, Nebraska, Nevada, and Idaho.
Nice.
Yeah, to pass similar laws, which actually are great for child protective services, because if you're not wasting all your time investigating, these non-crimes, you can dig deeper into the families where something disturbing is going on and make sure that those kids are safe. So there should be a much higher bar for when we start investigating parents and simply giving them some independence, whether it's because you want them to walk to school and get that fresh air and that independence, or because you have to, you're working 2 jobs and your kid has to come home with a latchkey because you won't be home till 6. None of that should be considered neglect.
Well, thank you for advocating for we parents who want to do the right thing in so many states. I think that's the message here, and I appreciate that you don't want to tell all the scary stories because they are few and far between. And most of the time, parents are going to stick together and people are going to say, well done, good job. You're raising
Yeah.
a child who will be independent. And this was just kind of mind blowing to me, this idea of every time a child climbs a tree, every time a child walks, through the neighborhood, to the park, to the store by themselves, in a way, they're dosing themselves with a little bit of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps build up their independence. It helps build up
Mm-hmm.
their ability to believe that they can do something the next time. It's such a great way to think about parenting, allowing, little doses of fear so that our kids aren't scared of everything,
Mm-hmm.
so that our kids aren't scared of nothing.
Right, exactly.
and we as parents as well. Lenore, I think this whole interview has really been encouraging, uplifting. I think we can get rid of those myths about how the world is scarier and more dangerous, and it's really not. And appreciate and respect one another as we try to build healthy, independent adults, which is our goal
Mm-hmm.
with our
Mm-hmm.
kids. I'd like to end on a note of encouragement. What would you want parents to just sort of walk away thinking that would encourage them in their parenting journey?
Oh, I would say that, you almost don't need anything other than your instinct and your friends, and depending on your relationship with your mom, to
Wow.
figure out almost any of the challenges that you're facing, if they're regular everyday challenges, if it's not some sad disease or something. But you come equipped with a lot of know-how, and we are living in a culture that's trying to undermine you so that you think you are going to make wrong decisions, or you need a lot of expertise or scientific studies to know just what is exactly right for your kid. Nobody gets it exactly right. No kid should be raised by somebody who is perfect. That would be so weird. So you're muddling through, and you got my vote.
Aw. Well, thank you for that. And I appreciate that. You basically said, yeah, I have a book, but you don't have to buy it if you don't want to. And I kind of like to say that too. Like, you can probably teach your kids to cook. If you want help, I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope no matter what, you get your kids in the kitchen, whether I'm on your parenting team or not. Like, let's just be straight with each other. We're capable as parents of solving our problems too, right?
Right. Actually, here's my other suggestion, which is something I keep wanting to do that I haven't done. Try to figure out how hard it is to chop off a finger. Like, I actually think it's really tough. And I keep thinking, like, shouldn't I make a video of that? Like, of a child trying to, and then my husband, no, it's a
No,
bad video. Don't do that. But, at some point, we just have to face our fears and realize some of them are just silly.
sure. Well, and I mean, our physical health, our fingers probably aren't as important as the identity with which we come to the world.
Well, right, but
Yeah,
we do. That being said, both of us want your child's fingers attached by the end of any advice you've heard from us. But it's just funny that we go automatically to such a dire circumstance. Just the catastrophizing thing again. When I would like to show just how hard that would be.
Mm-hmm. And how beneficial, allowing our children to take those tiny risks. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Tiny risk, big reward. Thank you so much, Lenore Skenazy.
Oh.
You're a delight to talk to. You weave words like the writer that you are, and we so appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Katie. And now I want to take a cooking lesson.
Oh, well, you can join our class, although we use like silly phrases because we talk to little kids, but You've been great. Thanks so much. And Healthy Parenting Connector listeners, I'm Katie Kimball from Kids Cook Real Food. As always, connecting you with those, I usually say experts, I'm not going to do it today, with those other mamas out there who have been in the trenches, who have some thoughts about how you might be able to muddle through and still manage somehow amazingly to raise healthy, independent adults. We build connection, we build confidence, we build creativity, and we want the same for you and your family. I will see you next week with more information. Thanks, guys.